Should we get started?
I think we can get started. We're close enough, right, friends? All right, go for it. You want to be up here?
Well, to click, yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today. We're going to be covering what's new in Tools and Experiences. First, we want to kick it off by telling you a little bit about us, if you don't know us. I'm Anna. I lead the Tools team with these wonderful people, Aaron, McKenna, and Drew. Do you guys want to say anything about yourselves?
Drew's very far away.
Awesome. So this is how you can contact us. This is an ask that we have. So if you want to go on your phone, scan the QR code, save this link for later. We're doing a survey because we want to figure out what you guys use and what you guys want to use. And this is going to help us formulate our strategy. So it's actually super important. So please take a few minutes today, later today, tomorrow, to do this. Everybody got it? SQL survey. Okay. Yeah, so this is the abstract. We're basically going to talk to you all about what's new across our tools and experiences. And then we're going to show a few demos. And hopefully at the end, we'll keep it really casual, keep it conversational. And we'll have time at the end to take any questions, comments, feedback. We want this to be engaging and interactive. We know it's late in the week, late in the day. So if you engage with us, we'll engage with you. No, I'm just kidding. We'll engage with you either way. Yeah, so I think with that, I'll pass to McKenna.
Thanks, Anna. Hi, everybody. I almost said good morning, but it's the evening. Yeah. It's almost dark out. My name is McKenna Berkman. I'm a PM on the SQL Experiences team, and I'm going to talk to you about the Azure portal and some fun things that we've shipped very recently. So first up is our Azure SQL Database free offer. Just went into a public preview. That shipped back in September. So I've actually got a little quick demo video on the next slide so I can actually walk you through how to get your free Azure SQL database. But I'll go through a couple of the offer details. You get one free SQL database per subscription, and unlike our previous offer, we've actually removed the time constraint. So this database is free for the lifetime of your subscription. So however long you have your subscription, you have your free database. It's great for testing, doing a personal project, if you have a demo you need to run, if you're just wanting to try out Azure SQL Database, even maybe deploying a small website. If you want some more details, reading, maybe more videos, you can go to aka.ms/freeazuredb. And then a couple of more details we've got down at the bottom. So with this offer, you get 100,000 free vCore seconds per month. I'll talk a little bit about that in the demo. 32 gigs of storage. It's serverless, general purpose. Again, no time limit there, and one database per subscription. So if you want to spin up another one, you'd have to delete your existing free database, create a new one. You're welcome to do that. So I will jump in and play a little video, but I'll talk to it. So if you want to create your own free database, you're going to go to the Microsoft Azure portal, log in, and then just like you would normally, go find the SQL Databases option and click on Create. It should drop you into the regular create form, but you will see up here in the top, you've got that purple banner. So you'll click Apply Offer. You'll see the cost summary will actually change for you. So now that should zero out and your estimated cost should be $0. Give your database a name, all the usual stuff. I called this one Past 2023 Free DB. And then if you scroll down and look into your compute and storage, you'll actually see a couple more details here. So again, you'll get that free database offer toggle. We also have some options for how the database is going to respond when you hit your 100,000 vCore second limit. So you can either have it pause and shut down for the remainder of the month once you hit that limit, or you can continue using the database, but you'll just be charged for whatever goes over 100,000 seconds. I switched it back to autopause, so I am limited to 4 vCores max. That just means I'll probably burn through my monthly allowance faster. But anyways, set it back to 2. All of that looks good. There's really nothing else for me to do, so I'll just click Review and Create, go through all of this. And again, you can see up my estimated cost is $0 a month, which is great. I'll go ahead and create that. And yeah, so we'd encourage anybody, if you haven't taken advantage of this offer, go and try it. Let us know. It's in public preview, so we're collecting feedback. Want to know what you're using your free database for, how fast you're hitting your limit. Here's just sort of the database overview page. You can see the pricing tiers listed as free, and then we actually do let you know how many vCore seconds you have left. So I had just created this one, so I've got all of it. So pretty simple. Let us know what you think, and we would love for you to try it out. Okay. Next thing I've got is the Elastic Jobs preview refresh. This actually just went out last week, so this is very, very new. This is a significant refresh to the previous preview. Main new capabilities include AAD, which is now Microsoft, Entra ID support, service managed private endpoint support, integration with Azure Alerts so you can get your job execution status. You can easily scale your job agent between 4 capacity tiers. So we've added some new capacity tiers for you to scale up or down. And I've got some screenshots later to sort of showcase all of the different capabilities that we've added directly into the Azure portal to help you manage this. So these have been customer asks that we have responded to. So these enhancements, it's going to augment the current capabilities of our Elastic Jobs, full backwards compatibility. It should be a lot easier for you to automate and execute your T-SQL jobs using PowerShell, REST, T-SQL. If you'd like to read more, we've got a link to documentation, but there's also a blog with a good demo video at aka.ms/ej-refresh-blog. So lots more good stuff there. Here's those screenshots that I promised. So a couple of things that I wanted to highlight. One is that we now display a monthly estimated cost. So as you're going and creating your job, you'll see that cost card appear to the right of your details, and it'll let you know, depending on the service tier you select, what your estimated cost will look like. And then on the right side, I've got a screenshot of just the portal view. So I'm landed in the Elastic Jobs overview, but I've highlighted all of the different menu items and capabilities that we've added to the portal. So again, this is in preview, just launched last week, just refreshed last week. So definitely let us know if you use Elastic Jobs, what you think of it. If you have questions or issues or suggestions, we would love to hear them. So that is, I think, all I've got for the portal. And I think I'm supposed to hand it over to Erin.
You are. I kind of forgot about this slide. But it's all good. So sorry, my bad. I was taking a couple pictures. So one of the things about our team that I don't think folks often really know is the space that we cover, or the amount of stuff that we cover. So McKenna mentioned the portal, which is one surface. But all of the things that are listed here also fall under our umbrella. So starting at the left with some engine components, and then going to drivers, the libraries, CLIs, and then also the UIs, which I'm thinking like most of you are probably familiar with the GUIs, right? SSMS, Azure Data Studio. But there's a ton of other things that our team works on. And as part of that, I thought I would take just a minute here to explain the dependencies specific to Management Studio and also Azure Data Studio. Because a lot of times when folks run into an issue, one thing that may not be clear is that there is something else that has to be fixed before we can fix it in the tool itself. So as an example, for SSMS, and this is really specific to SSMS 19, it has three immediate dependencies: SMO, server management objects, DAC effects, and then MDS, or Microsoft Data SQL Client. And you'll notice that that is version 3x. And then DAC effects has its own two dependencies, MDS also, and Scriptum, and SMO has one as well. So sometimes, depending upon what kind of issue occurs, it could be something within SSMS itself, right, within that code base, but it could be something in DAC effects that has to get fixed, which is still within our team, but there's all these other things they're working on, right? So that has to get fixed, and then we have to pick it up, let's say in SSMS or ADS. And ADS's dependencies are slightly different. As a reminder, Azure Data Studio is a fork of VS Code. And in order to get that rich UI that we have within Azure Data Studio, we have something called the SQL Tools service, or you sometimes might hear it called STS. So STS then has a dependency on, similarly to what SSMS does, SMO, DAC effects, and MDS as well. But notice that the MDS version for Azure Data Studio is 5. It's slightly different. So there is a difference there between the tools in terms of the version of MDS that they run. So just a little bit of more kind of context for folks as we continue to talk about the tools and what updates we're making and where that fits into kind of the bigger picture here. So before I move on, any quick questions about that? Okay, excellent.
Cool.
Back
Let's
to
talk
you.
about CLIs. Yeah.
Watch out.
Okay. All right, so I am Drew Squires-Kabala, as Anna introduced earlier. I'm going to talk to some CLIs and libraries real quick, so we don't quite get to the fun, GUI stuff just yet. go-sqlcmd might be something that you've heard of, but if you haven't heard of it, you might be looking at the second half and being like, SQLcmd, I know that. Why would you mess it up? We love it. I promise, we have not messed it up. In fact, go-sqlcmd has very high compatibility to SQLcmd itself, and the two are coexisting. What has happened is with the original SQLcmd that we all know and love is it has a dependency on ODBC, the driver, and so when you're installing it in an environment, you have to manage more and more dependencies. And as we looked at that and in interest of enabling things faster like Azure Active Directory, now known as Entra ID, or other newer features, we wanted to make sure that we had a lighter weight CLI that could go along with it. So when I say lighter weight, I don't mean that it has fewer features. I mean that you get a single executable for the environment, or it's easier to install through something like Winget or Brew or apt, and that's it. There's no ODBC configuration. There's no additional packages to be installing. So when you've got this newer tool that's available to use with a lot of compatibility, the first thing that I want you to remember is you don't need to go out and rewrite all your scripts. In fact, if you're using SQLcmd and you're super happy with it, you don't have to stop using it. But I do want you to understand that there is another option now that's going to be a little bit more Azure forward, but it also has a few new scenarios that can be helpful. I mentioned managed identity authentication for AAD. But then the other one is working with container management and spinning up development environments. So I have a quick demo here. If we get audio, great, you'll hear from the PM that has worked on this. If not, sad for you, you'll have to hear me explain what's happening.
One of the cool features of the go-sql command is being able to very quickly create different servers. Let's take a look at that now. So I just did a command, SQL command, with the create keyword. We're targeting one to create an MS SQL, which is not a SQL server. The two options right now are MS SQL and SQL Azure. We're telling it we want to accept a license agreement. And then we're also telling it what backup to use. So this is a one and done process. We come in, we say what we want to do, we give it a backup, and we go. So let's go ahead and run this. And you'll see how much work this does on our behalf. So we're going and we're downloading the container image. I've got Podman on my local machine, but you could use Docker as well. It's creating that container. It's creating a context. So basically what it's doing is it's creating the login and a password for me. And what we'll see here in a second is it will also go ahead and rotate the SA password for me. And there we go, we're downloading the backup now, we're restoring it and processing it. Pretty soon we'll see the upgrade messages coming through. There they are. And we're done. So next up, we can actually run commands right here. So let's take the example number 2. We'll say SQL command, query, select, add version. There's our version. Now this is where it gets even cooler. We can say SQL command, open ADS. Okay, we're going to just wait for our server to turn green. There it is. We'll click on databases here. We'll expand worldwide importers full. We can see, we're connected up to our database just like we would normally. Let's just run a query here. We'll do a select top 1000 from purchase orders. There we go, we're getting data. Let's do something more aggressive here. I've got a file here, my recent files, profitability by customer. So I've got a couple of group bys, lots of joins, some sums, some counts, the kind of thing you wouldn't want to run on your production server during the middle of your business day. So, this is a great example of copying the data off, doing an analysis, getting your answer without having to worry about impacting your customers. Let's go ahead and run this one. And you see there's our list of customers sorted or ranked by profitability. And there you go. That's just how easy it is to create a new instance of SQL Server in a brand new container, restore a database to it, and then run some pretty heavy-duty queries against it to do some data analysis. All just by using the new go-sql command.
Thank you for the assist, Aaron. So I apologize for the audio issues at the beginning. I want to pause real quick here to recap what SQL CMD is doing on top of the initial querying capability that we're familiar with. It also has tied in now the ability to integrate with the Docker runtime to spin up containers and then bring in this case, that using flag says, hey, here's a back file. Go ahead and restore this to the container. And once it's started that container, now you have that context to work with in SQL CMD. So if you need to do some kind of workflows where you want to attach something that you've got as a back file or a sample database in this case, and then use that information, you're able to use SQL CMD to do that. So yeah, the AKA link, because we love those, is go-sqlcmd-qs for the quick start to try out this kind of workflow. DACFX and friends. Some of you are like, DACF what? DACFX is the data tier application framework. It's a library, so you probably don't know it, and that's totally okay, but I do hope that you've maybe heard of the SQL Package CLI or SSDT in Visual Studio, or maybe you've heard about Azure Data Studio or are using it and then have seen the extension marketplace where you might come across the SQL Projects extension. This is all a nice little ecosystem of functionality around being able to work with your database as code. So as a reminder what that looks like, from the SQL Package CLI, its core capabilities revolve around extracting and publishing schemas or importing and exporting a copy of the database. Please note I did not say a backup of your database. I was not here when they named it a backpack file. It is not a backup file. It is a portable copy of your database. This is your database on Azure SQL Database, Azure SQL Managed Instance, SQL Server back to things that are supported. All of those have portability across each other with the backpack file format. It is that enterprise promise from Microsoft that your database is portable. The DACPack side thing is even cooler, frankly, because it enables you to do schema changes in a declarative fashion. Say, I have a table and I want it to have these 10 columns on it. And when you point SQL Package at it, it's going to look at what is currently on the database and figure out what it needs to do such that that database has those same 10 columns in that table. If the table already exists, maybe it needs to add a column. If the table doesn't exist, it's going to create that table. So this is a DevOps-y thing, and this is not a DevOps-y section, so I'm not going to go too much further into the basic functionality there. But just to give you an idea of this is the world that we're playing in here. If you want to learn more about SQL Package, there were lots of cool DevOps sessions here, but I'm always happy to talk to you about it. The thing that I want to talk to you about are things that have been newly added to SQL Package. This one is a really big deal, and it just came out 3 weeks ago. So you probably haven't heard about it, and if you have, good for you. The Parquet functionality in SQL Package is a game changer, because I just talked about how a backpack file is a copy of your database. And some of you are like, wow, my database is like 900 gigs. That's a big file. How would I store that on a drive somewhere or transfer it over the network? That sounds slow. It is. The Parquet file addition to SQL Package uses the external table capabilities with Polybase in SQL Server 22 and Azure SQL Managed Instance, and allows the data itself to be read and written from Azure Blob Storage. So when I want to export, get that copy of my portable database, in this case, instead, if I run extract with the Parquet file option, all I have to worry about transferring is the schema file, the DACPack. The data itself, I'm moving to Azure Blob Storage. So now I'm not having to deal with that hypothetically large 900 gig backpack file. That's being read and written much faster to another Azure destination. So this is kind of changing the game as to our performance bottlenecks for database portability. It's pretty exciting. But to be clear, it is only for Azure SQL MI and SQL 22 right now. The other few things that have been added to SQL Package recently, if you are in the SQL Package space, you know what these properties are. If you are not, do not feel bad. I know these are a little bit niche. The first one is a publish property. If you're running SQL Package publish, it's going to make those database changes to update the state. In some cases, it's going to look at your table and be like, wow, I really need to change this table up. I'll go ahead and move the data somewhere else and recreate this table and do that. And that could take a long time. You now have an option to say, hey, actually, if you're going to recreate a table, just don't. Just stop. It'll cancel the deployment plan. It won't run it. The third thing here is an extract property. When we talked about DACPacks being that schema copy of your database, so the object definition, that's cool, but it's a zip file with some XMLs in it. It's great for some things, but it's not particularly human readable. Raise your hand if you like SQL files. I assumed so. That's what extract property allows you to say. Instead of extracting the database as this zip file thing, actually just give me the SQL files for my database. I want to be able to read the script, see the definition. So for any of you that have ever had to Google how to open DACPack, I know people are doing that. This is a new option added for you. Fabric SQL Data Warehouse is supported in the latest SQL Package release, and it is also available to install as a .NET tool. It has been available as a zip download for a long time. That wasn't great, so this is even better. I know I promised this little esoteric detour into SQL Projects land. If you have worked with SQL Projects, especially in a team environment, you have probably had a merge conflict because two people added a file at the same time. Some of you are nodding and some of you are shaking your fists. It's an older file format for projects. We have been working on an SDK-style SQL project that's in preview right now, so you get rid of all that verbosity. But we've also added some very modern DevOps-y things like being able to do package references to other databases. The system databases themselves are just now widely available, and you can do .NET build from whatever platform you are on. This is available right now from Command Line, Azure Data Studio, and VS Code. It is not in Visual Studio yet. OK, speaking of Visual Studio, SSDT has had a couple of different updates most recently. I know it is not 2022 anymore. That came out last year, as it makes sense. But the extensions for SSAS, RS, and IS are all now available in GA for VS22. Another one of those things where some of you are cheering and some of you are shaking your fists. I know it did take a little while, but they are all available now. So if you have been holding off on your upgrade to VS22, now is the time. I do recommend it. There is some good performance improvements in VS22, as well as productivity improvements. What I am alluding to is that Copilot is available, and that's always super fun. The most recent GA release of VS came out earlier this week with that little conference called .NET Conf. Includes SQL Client 5. SQL Client 5 is cool because it adds support for TLS 1.3, which, unless you're in a highly secure environment, you're kind of like, eh. But it does give us kind of the latest protocol for ensuring that the connection has been fully secured in both directions. Erin?
All right. So I always like to ask this question when I'm doing a session about tools. How many of you use, on a regular basis, Azure Data Studio? You're some of my favorite people. Actually, I love you all. Those of you that do not use Azure Data Studio on a regular basis, have you given it a try? Yes. And what happened? Why did you stop using it? Just a few random comments. Doesn't have all the features. There's dark mode in Azure Data Studio, right? Yes. That's a good thing, right? Because a lot of you love dark mode, right? Okay. Any other reason why in Azure Data Studio wasn't your thing?
Seems too disorganized.
Seems too disorganized.
Hard to find where something is.
Do you use SSMS?
Yeah.
Okay, so coming from SSMS over to Azure Data Studio, it feels disorganized, hard to use, right? You don't know where things are. Muscle memory, not the same. Right. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Those are all great, valid reasons. And point number one, I'm not here to convince you that you need to be using Azure Data Studio instead of SSMS, okay? So when I'm sharing these updates about Azure Data Studio, it's for those of you that are using it. It's for those of you that are potentially interested in using it. It's for maybe other folks that you know who are new to SQL, who like the look and feel of VS Code and need to work more with data, okay? And on that note, let's take a look at some of the work that we've done with Azure Data Studio in the last year. So since we were here at Summit 1 year ago, we have had 8 releases of Azure Data Studio. And in that time, we GA'd Table Designer, we GA'd a Query Plan Viewer, we have full ARM64 support. We migrated to the MDS 5X. Drew had talked about that for SSDT for Visual Studio. We had that way back in November of last year for Azure Data Studio. We migrated to MSAL. We added filter and group by schema in Object Explorer. I know that's been a long-standing request for folks in SSMS. It does exist in Azure Data Studio. We have support for connection pooling. We have GitHub Copilot, so that's available in VS Code, also available within Azure Data Studio. We have added user management functionality that still is currently in preview. We've added support for opening XEL files in the Profiler extension. We've made tons of improvement related to connectivity. We refreshed the Azure Object Explorer. We've made results related to improvements related to query results. And then we have a whole host of extensions that also went GA and a couple that are still standing in preview. So if you look at that, you're going to be like, hang on a second. You just told me that you weren't trying to convince me to use Azure Data Studio instead of SSMS, but you had 8 releases in the last year, and you've released how many SSMSs? They're not really meant for the same audience, okay? SSMS is very wide. It's very deep. But if you take someone who's new to SQL or new to Azure, and you throw them into SSMS, have you ever done that? But have you ever watched anybody who hasn't heavily used SSMS? Like, yes, thank you for, right? You put them in SSMS, and they're like, what is this? And so I understand that for those of us who have used SSMS for the 18 years that it's been available, it is a legal adult in the United States, right? Then Azure Data Studio feels unfamiliar. But for other folks, it's just way too much and they don't need it. And that's totally fine. In the September release of Azure Data Studio, which is 1.46, specifically, we did all of this. So we did a couple more things related to connection. We had a ton of feedback related to stability, reliability in Azure Data Studio. On the topic of feedback, have you ever been in Azure Data Studio or in the portal, for example, and it exists in other surfaces in Microsoft's suite of products where it pops up and it says, hey, we'd like your feedback, right? And then it says, what do you think? And sometimes it asks you, like, are you happy or unhappy? But then sometimes it says, like, would you recommend it to a friend? And that's a scale of like 0 to 10. How many of you have ever submitted that? Okay. When you've submitted that, have you ever written a comment? I read all those comments. So if you are in Azure Data Studio and you get that, and you get the pop-up and you submit the feedback with a comment, I read every single one of those. So I'm very aware that there were challenges related to connectivity, reliability, and that it is not the same as SSMS, and that it's missing all kinds of features. I know that. It's on me, it's on us, our team, to make all of you better aware of the value and the purpose of Azure Data Studio compared to SSMS. So within ADS, we also started introducing additional preview features because that functionality that you kind of expect to have in SSMS, like creating a database, dropping a database, attach, detach, database properties, server properties, that exists now within Azure Data Studio. If you haven't checked that out, actually, we're going to go off script right here. I would definitely encourage you to do so. So I'm going to hop into ADS really quick here and connect to my instance, because I just want to show you, I want to show hopefully just one thing really, really quick once this gets connected. I'll hop back here for 1 second. What we did in the November release, which was just last week, we did a VS Code version bump. Again, fork of VS Code, so one of the things we need to do on a regular basis is bring over those changes. We implemented parallel message processing, usability improvements, options for saving results to Excel. I had a fun conversation with someone earlier in this week. You can now save it to Excel, the results set, and then it gives you a little pop-up and it says, like, do you want to open the file or do you want to open the folder? It's pretty handy. And then you've probably seen the notification about Azure AD becoming Microsoft Entra. We've had to do the rebranding for that within the tools as well. So let me see if this connected. Too many windows. Here we go. So one of the things that I just want to point out here, right? We come in here, you'll see that all of these are in preview, right, and noted as such over here. And if I come back into the properties preview over here, what I want to point out is, right, we have a lot of the same things that we see in SSMS, but not exactly. I'm not promising parity here. But I do like to point out that we have the database scoped configuration pane, which doesn't exist in SSMS. So you have to do the alter database, right? You have to go look up the syntax because you don't remember it. You now have the option to do that through the UI here. So I just like to make sure that folks are aware of that for those of you that do like Azure Data Studio. But I think a lot of you really like SSMS. And what's new in 19? So in the same time frame of all those ADS releases, we've had five releases of SSMS. The original 19.0 back in January, we had a couple hot fixes. We had a 19.1 in May, and we just released 19.2 on Monday. So some of the major improvements were we had to go up to MDS3. We did that in the original 19 release. And this means, Drew had alluded to improvements related to security. We'll get more of them when we get to MDS5, but in 3, we've got support for forcing encryption when you have that enabled for the instance. So if you go into Configuration Manager, right-click, go into the protocols, and you have force encryption set to yes, then you have the option, you want to select the option to trust server certificate. That actually didn't used to work before. You might have thought you were forcing encryption, but you weren't. It now is being enforced properly. A lot of folks ran into that where they had this set at the server level and they didn't realize that upon upgrading to 19, they had to check trust server certificate. We went from ADAL to MSAL, and we added additional Entra options. I should change that from Azure. And we also have additional output logging options for SQL Client, for Azure Active Directory authentication, and for REST API. So for those of you who may not be aware, actually that's in here, did you know that you can go into this view and you can go to output, and let's say that I do something within here and I start to expand that. The output from Object Explorer shows up here. Sometimes we might ask for information when troubleshooting, so we have these additional options that are now available, this Azure REST, the SQL client as well. So sometimes when troubleshooting, those come in pretty handy. We improved the Azure AD, or the Entra authentication experience, by enabling the system default web browser by default. So some of you, if you have trouble sometimes logging in with the default browser because it still uses IE, right? And why would it use IE? There's a limitation there that we will get to fix. But as a workaround for now, we've changed it. So you want to say false for using the default system browser. It sets it to, or it's set to false, it sets it to true by default for 19.1. We also removed the SQL vulnerability assessment. Some folks were a little bit upset about this. Here's the thing. What is available out through the portal is much more accurate and current compared to what we had in SSMS, and we didn't want anyone using what was in SSMS thinking that was the correct and complete information, so we pulled that out. We also improved the SSMS startup time. How many of you come into work, double click, go and get your coffee, right? Because it's going to take a while for it to load. I see you, right? So we improved that in 19. We will be looking to continue to improve that. I've heard that feedback as well. We made some changes with regard to version consistency. So on the left, we have the 18.12.1 help dialog, and on the right, we have the 19.2. Got a lot of feedback that SSMS 18.12.1, why would it be version 15.0. whatever? Long story, but anyway, we fixed that in 19.1, starting in 19.1. So it shows up here within the About window. It also shows up when you right-click on the file and look at the properties. The version is consistent there as well. We've got some new PowerShell options. For those of you that love that, we've documented those as well, but it's a whole new section of information. I did remember to include the link for that. In 19.1, we had added support for secure enclaves and in-place encryption through the Always Encrypted wizard. The Always Encrypted team has done a fantastic job of bringing functionality into SSMS. The Managed Instance team, they were in here right before us. They added a network checker wizard. And support for restoring from S3 compatible object storage. We don't have backup to, but we do have restore from. And then in 19.2, again, which just came out on Monday, even more improvements. So support for secure enclaves with Always Encrypted for Azure SQL Database, and also improved performance within that wizard, and improvements related to the link feature there. For those of you that use linked servers within Azure SQL Managed Instance, there's a Azure SQL Resources browser to make setting up that linked server way easier. Connection pooling in the editor, load time when you're creating a new dialog. Again, we did the Entra stuff in there. The docs are not all up to date. So that probably isn't going to be confusing for most of you, but for some folks, be aware that what you're seeing in the tools may not have every single update within the docs. There's a header on the docs page. It's a lot of pages that we have to update, so we're getting there. And then one of the biggest things in here was related to one of my favorites, which is extended events. So for those of you who have ever, how many of you have used extended events? Oh, do you know how happy that makes me? That's fantastic. I love extended events. Now, how many of you have used extended events with Azure SQL Database? How many have wanted to, but you're like, there's no way because I have to write the data and it has to be a file out in a blob storage, or I'm writing it to the ring buffer, but I don't know how to parse that XML. It was extremely difficult and painful is really the short story there. The good news is that we've made a nice improvement here. So I am right here in SSMS 18, right, the old one. And you'll notice that underneath extended events, right, I've got my sessions, but I don't have anything related to X event profiler. And if I start this session, and then I right-click on it, the watch live data is grayed out. So I need to be writing it to a target somewhere in order to then go look at and analyze the data. If I switch over to 19.2, again, right up here, I'm connected to the exact same instance, and if I refresh, same Azure SQL database. If I refresh this, there we go. I already had started this event session. You'll notice that I have the X event profiler down here, which I didn't have before. And if I right-click on this, I now have watch live data. So the viewer opens up, and whatever is coming in at that time, I will start to get. So I have the ability to capture, right, queries that are running against my Azure SQL database, have them show up here in the live viewer, and then I can save this output out to a table, out to a file, right, rather than having to worry about writing it to a target. The caveat here, the thing that you really need to make sure you're doing is when you're connecting to this Azure SQL database, that you come to this second tab and you specify the database itself. If you're connecting to Logical Master, right, where you connect to the Azure SQL logical server and then you see all of the databases, you won't have this option. You have to connect directly to the database by specifying the name in here. Okay? Now I'm going to pause and see what questions y'all have. Yes? You've been using, this is a great question. You've been using Profiler here. You would think I would know how to do this in here because I love this. Drew.
Is the extension installed?
No idea. I would think so. Why, yes, it's installed. It is, I should be able to do it. Here it is, Launch Profiler. Okay, so you're saying, I do this in Azure Data Studio, and I can do this in Azure Data Studio against Azure SQL Database. And you're like, why, right? When I just told you that until here, we couldn't do view live data.
Yeah, well, I guess my question was more on what I've done is I changed here to the extended events that it creates that session, and I can customize it. I can still open it in the profiler session, I guess, but it's still working now. If I kind of want to tweak my own thing for my
So it would still work in extended events, but let me tell you how Azure Data Studio does it and why it looks like you're viewing live data in Azure Data Studio. So the way that this profiler extension is implemented is that when it goes and it creates the event session, it actually creates it with a ring buffer target, and then it reads the ring buffer target and displays the data to you here. So if you've gone and modified it, that event session is still out there and it's still writing to the ring buffer target, and you could run that event session against your Azure SQL database. You could go to Management Studio and you could right-click and watch live data. But the thing is, when you look at that, just so you're aware, what you will see, if you go into the properties of it, is you should see the target as a ring buffer target. Okay? Interestingly enough, did you know that when you create an extended event session, you actually don't have to have a target? You knew that. So when you're creating these, just as an FYI, if you're creating them in Azure SQL Database, if you don't want to persist that data in any way, you do not have to add a target to it. If you want to retain it for some reason, then you could add the event file target, or you could have the ring buffer, and you could pull the data out some way. Good? If it gets too chatty, will you miss events? That depends upon the setting that you have within the advanced options. By default, it does allow event loss. That's by design. That's an optimization. You can run into performance issues if you say no event loss. OK. I'm not going to worry about this for now. Other questions? Yes?
So in SQL Management Studio, your top portion, you can zoom in on the text in the grid. There's not so much zoom options. Is there anything improved that make it easier to find? Or?
You mean like if I run a query in here?
Yeah.
Let me connect to something. By the way, we are at the point in the show where I think I've gone through every single slide, right? I think I went through most of the slides. Good enough. The questions don't need to be specific just to Azure Data Studio or SSMS if folks have other questions. Orders. I should probably do a limit on this, right? So if I've done this, you're telling me I have this zoom here, right? That's what you're asking about?
So that zooms in the text.
But you want to zoom in down here
Yeah.
without changing the font size?
Yeah, just like what's the easiest option to do it?
The easiest option would be to come in. It depends. There's no way to do it on the fly, is the short answer. The longer answer is if I come into fonts and colors and I select grid results, I can change the output size of that. Now, I have to restart the app in order for that to occur, so I'm not going to do that right now, but I can change those. Yep. Yeah. Yes. I mentioned Copilot. I mentioned GitHub Copilot for Azure Data Studio, also in VS Code. So this is an extension. So if I say GitHub Copilot, it is that. And I am in Azure Data Studio. Yes?
So
Not Visual Studio. I am in Azure Data Studio. So multiple tools, which is sometimes confusing, right? Visual Studio, SSMS, Azure Data Studio, VS Code. They are 4 separate tools. Would you love to have all of them in one? Sure. Are we going to be able to do that? No. Just I'll be real honest with you. No. Yes? That's a great question. I haven't used Azure Data Studio. Can I connect to a database that's on premises? Absolutely. Azure, in that sense, is almost a little bit misleading. I've gotten that feedback as well. Maybe we should just call it Data Studio. What do you think? Yeah? How many people would love to see it just named to like Data Studio? Makes it less confusing. Okay. How many people are tired of Microsoft changing names for no reason? Okay. But would you agree that changing it to Data Studio is a good reason? Yes. Okay. So that one I might win. If I name everything Azure, it doesn't have meaning anymore. Okay. Valid feedback. Valid feedback. What's that?
It just means Microsoft.
It just means
It's
Microsoft.
not Microsoft,
Okay.
so why?
Okay.
Aaron, can I go back like 3.5 minutes?
Yes.
There
you
was
can
a
go back
question about
3.5 minutes.
Copilot and where it's available, and I did mention when I was talking that there's Copilot in Visual Studio, the
Okay.
big one. And
Okay.
yes, it is there in Visual Studio 2022. I won't definitively say whether it's available in the older versions because I don't remember.
I tried it in 2022 this morning, and it was cool.
It is
Awesome.
very cool. We had a whole session on that. We do have a whole session on that. So yes.
One quick question.
One more. You get one more, and then we got to rotate. Okay.
So if you're using 2022, can you connect to SQL Server 2019 and use Copilot?
Yes. So Visual Studio 2022 will have support for connecting to any SQL Server that is in support in 2022. And then you can use Copilot in any of the text editors that open up in Visual Studio, whether you're connected or not.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
That backpack extension, did I hear you right? It's a copy of your database that you store to a SQL Server?
Everything except for the word restore. The reason why I know I am really pedantic, but
That's why we like him.
they put up with me. So it is a copy of your database, but if you have not stopped activity on your database, it is not consistent.
Transactionally consistent.
Correct. So when we take that backpack file then, that is a copy of your database, and then import it to another instance that could be SQL Server in this case, yes, you now have a copy of that database somewhere else. It is absolutely that. I just am very, very careful when people are like, this is not a file backup. I'm like, nope, it is not.
Is there a way to acquiesce the database?
Ooh.
Stopping activity to it is the crux there.
When you say acquiesce, hang on one sec. When you say acquiesce, can you maybe explain your scenario in a little bit more detail?
Well, like when you run a backpack, when you run a regular backup, the database gets acquiesced. Volume shadow copy also will acquiesce your database. It stops everything.
Yes.
Snapshot, like lots of things will acquiesce your database. It basically says stop everything so I can get a clean snapshot and then pick everything back up.
Actually, when you do a backup, it doesn't stop everything. What happens is that when you have a backup, it is a copy of all of your data up until the point of time that the backup finishes. Which means if there are things that are in flight, technically, they're in flight. And when you restore the backup, right, if it's just a BAK file, if it's the full backup, then anything that's in flight, it actually rolls back. It goes through crash recovery. It does undo and redo to get it to a consistent state.
So I'm going to do the quick answer, but then I would love to chat afterwards. The quick answer is not the fun or easy one, and that's you make a backup-related copy of that same database on your first platform using the things that we have available to do the acquiescence there. And then based on that copy that has no activity to it, that is the one that you then do the backpack copy of. Yep.
Yes?
Does your team work on SQL Ledger? And if so, can you help me understand how you might differentiate between that and extended events?
Peter, come over here.
Do you want to come answer? Can you take that one out? Do you want to take that one? Can we take that after? Okay. Peter is in the back.
Stand up.
And that is the person who will be able to help you in terms of your ledger question. I realized that I had a couple slides that I didn't get to. Okay. Hold on. I forgot to tell you about SSMS 20. Oh, whoops.
Is it late in the week?
Sorry about that. We're not getting rid of SSMS, okay? I've gotten asked that a lot. We're not deprecating SSMS. We have done a lot of Azure Data Studio releases. You're actually going to start to see those start to slow down, probably instead of every other month, maybe every 3 months, because we've got to turn our attention to SSMS 20. This is a big, big release for us. Typically, you only see a version bump in SSMS when it is paired with an on-prem release of SQL Server. There is no on-prem release of SQL Server that I am talking about here, okay? This is an independent version bump for SSMS that will work with SQL Server 2022 and back. We have to go to the latest shell, Visual Studio shell. The great news here is that we get 64-bit. Yay! Awesome. We are also going to MDS 5 to get those security improvements that we talked about before. And we are updating the connection dialog. Again, that hasn't changed in 18 years since the original release. There are a lot of things, there are a lot of options that you select when you connect, like you connect to a specific database, or maybe you do application intent read-only, or you do encrypt, or trust server certificate. So we are going to move those things around so they are on the front. And then we're also adding a connection string option so that you can paste in a connection string or you can copy it out from there, and the ability to test your connection. Yes, very exciting. Oh, I will be sure to let engineering know that you're excited about that too. Awesome. Again, it's a big change. We'll have previews first, as we did for 19. We are hoping that they will be available in the first half of next year. So again, SSMS is wide and it is deep, and this is a big change. There's a lot of work that has to happen. So know that we are working on getting this done, and I had said we were going to be starting that soon last year, and we had some issues to work through. So I'm serious. This is what we're doing next. So quick recap on this slide, but time for more questions. I'll just leave this up here because we've kind of already talked through a lot of this. Yeah?
So with SSMS 20, we hear a lot, we have almost everything actually all on Azure.
Yes?
And like with database topology or
Oh.
switching between databases, whatever, sometimes you get the wait forever dialog and the sometimes it's an practice.
Okay.
If I didn't have SQL prompts to restore my tabs, I'd be calling you guys every day.
So
Something like that to deal with those things.
where did we add this? Where did we add this? So there is, I'm not going to, oh wait, I can search. Where did we do this, Drew? General? Oh, come on. There is a new option, I swear. Am I in the right version? That's a great question. I am. Check. There's a lot of options in here. That's all I can really tell you, friends. There is an option that you want to enable, and I will find it for you at some point, to stop checking for connections before closing. I think, is that what you're thinking of, where it's like the tran count? No, not that one.
Not that. I do care about that too. That came out in the later version. So
Keep going.
if I have a database that's serverless, so
Okay.
it's paused, right? And
Yep.
I go to connect to it, my whole SSMS freezes while that instance is starting up because it was paused.
Okay.
So I'd love to like have that not coupled with connecting to maybe just not like SSMS is all I need for that. Sometimes I get the timeout because serverless takes a little bit to
Yes.
attach and then
Yes.
connect to it again.
Okay, so for those of you who might not have heard that, serverless, right, it will go,
Sometimes it'll crash SSMS.
yeah, serverless will go to sleep, right, if there's no activity after a certain amount of time. And so then when you walk away from your desk at the end of the day and then you come back to SSMS the next day and you go to reconnect, it takes a long time, it can time out, you can have issues with SSMS. Not that I'm trying to convert you to Azure Data Studio, I'm serious, but we have addressed a lot of that within Azure Data Studio. We do need to do that work within SSMS as well in terms of kind of connection retry and stability. Also be aware, I'm going to call this out specifically, which some folks might disagree with, but if you are connected to serverless and you leave your Object Explorer open and you are like have the database expanded, there are some background queries that can run that actually keep the database active. That could be true for any application, any client application that anybody creates, right? It's not just tools. But it's something that I like folks to be aware of. So if you're connected to serverless at the end of the night when you're done, at least just collapse everything. But we are going to be looking to offer some options related to that, and we will look to see what improvements we can make there.
I might have put a comment or two in.
Might have put a comment or two in there. If you were you the one that swore? Did you use a swear word? Was that you?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
So one of my pet peeves with ADS, I'm just wondering if this is ever going to change, is it ever going to remember the scroll position in the results grid? So when you go to another tab and come back, it doesn't just go right back to row one, it stays where you scrolled to?
That's a great question. Do you happen to know if there's an issue logged in GitHub for that? There is.
It's always worked that way.
It's always worked that way, but that doesn't mean that it has to work that way, right? Let's make sure that we're good on that one. So if you're not familiar,
Actually, in the last release now, it just goes to like inline versions.
That's
That row, like when I go to another tab, come back, results grid is just now blank.
So definitely make sure that one's open. That one I don't know is open or not, but
Right.
the scrolly thing is there.
Right. So one of the things that I would ask you to do is go find that issue. Drew says it does exist, and I believe Drew, in here. Let me make another point here real quick. There's 2,000 issues logged here, okay? Believe me, we've tackled a lot of them, right? But there's a lot of things that we still need to fix. There's a lot of requests that exist out there. If you're the person who's in charge of deciding what goes into Azure Data Studio, you get to decide, okay? You're deciding for the masses. How do you decide what to put in there? What, votes? Votes, comments, right? How do we know what's important to you? I need all of you to tell us. So I need you to go into the issues, and I need you to say, this is important to me, I'm gonna upvote it, and I'm also gonna leave a comment that tells me why, because the more context that we have about why you need something helps us understand the priority, right? And if I could do everything, I would, but we don't have all of those people, and we're probably not gonna do it fast enough. So we have to figure out the priority, and that's how we're gonna move things into the tools, okay? So my request would be, find that, comment on it, upvote it, tell your friends.
Quick follow-up to that, is there a similar queue like that for Management Studio?
Is there a similar queue like that for Management Studio? Drew, should we share our opinion on the queue for Management Studio, or not really?
aka.ms/SQL feedback.
Right, so it is this site here, feedback, and specifically within the SQL space. Now, I would encourage you again to search in here. Notice we've added a few filters in here. So we do have filters specific to tooling, but it hasn't been applied to every single thing that's in here. So again, same request, which is look to see if what you're looking for already exists. If it does, upvote it, comment. Every time it gets an additional certain number of votes, we get notified. So if you have a party and you tell all your friends to go and vote for something, like I'll probably get notified that, hey, this is really important. And I don't even necessarily know who those people are, okay? So this is how we know, right? We need to hear from you. This is why we do this session. We have 14 more minutes before we're done. I know it's the end of the day, but we left this open, right, so that you can ask these kinds of questions and we can have this dialogue about anything, not just SSMS and ADS.
Okay, that was actually not a question, I'll be fast.
Oh, sorry if I didn't answer and I didn't understand it.
That was like bonus question that I just thought of.
Okay. Okay.
So, along the subject of like duplicate tools that do similar things.
Yes.
And extended events.
Yes.
Are there any plans to do anything with Profiler or? To be honest, like,
Yes.
I use and like extended events, but if I'm in the middle of like, I need something real fast, I will sometimes just use Profiler because it's faster to get up as much.
Okay.
So I guess the two parts of the question is, what are the plans for Profiler? And are there any plans to make extended events maybe a little bit quicker to like spin up?
Okay. So the questions are, what are you doing with Profiler? Because you said it's been deprecated since SQL Server 2008, and here we are
15
years later, and it's still there. And then are there any plans to basically make things a little bit easier with extended events, right? So in terms of Profiler, as far as I know, it's not getting removed. And if you don't know, extended events is a passion of mine. It's something that I've been speaking about for probably about 8 or 9 years now, trying to get folks to convert over. So you can either be Team Profiler or you can be Team XE. You can guess that I'm Team XE. I understand that Profiler is quicker, but it's quicker because that's your muscle memory. I really believe that, right? Because that's what you're familiar with. So what I would really love to do is improve the functionality that we have. But again, there's a set of priorities, right, that we have to think about. So what I try to encourage folks to do instead is to leverage the fact that when you create an extended event session within here, you can have more than one event session that persists, right? These are server level. So what I do is I create one and I use it and then I just leave it there. And then when I need it, because I'm likely going to need that or something very similar to it again, all I have to do is right-click and start it, right? With Trace or with Profiler, things were getting created and deleted, right? Every single time. And then when you restarted the instance, that would go away if you happen to have something running. Extended events, the event definition persists through your restarts. So to me, that is the faster solution. If you can't leave them running on the system, then script them, right? Every single one of these you can script out, create two, right? Have that as a file.
I'm gonna.
Can you facilitate that process by providing some templates?
You can facilitate that process by providing some templates. So when you come in here and you say new session like this, when this opens up, right, you have these templates right here, which are the defaults that ship. You can go in here and you can edit that XML file. And then you can take that and you can deploy that on all your servers. This can be edited, yes. Jonathan Cahias, who I used to work with at SQL Skills and is one of the smartest people that I know, probably has a blog post about it. This is our Cahias. There you go. There's a blog post. It's in 2012 because that's when the UI came out. Pretty sure most of it still works as expected. If not, let me know.
I'm going to expand real quick on the question about like how do we make extended events easier? Because I am not the 9-year blogging expert about X events. I use X events by accident when I open up Profiler in Azure Data Studio because I was like, hey, I click Profiler in SSMS. I know, I'm sorry. But coming here at Microsoft, the SSMS feedback site that we were looking at just a moment ago, if there's a reason why you're opening up Profiler because there are emergencies where you just need to know what T-SQL is running, those very specific scenarios that helps us know why clicking those Object Explorer options that make me a little bit uncomfortable, not gonna lie, knowing those specific scenarios does help us make those things better and easier to use. So when you file feedback, it's just as important to be like, hey, this sucks. Also, this is what I'm trying to do. That is the most important part.
Do you have a deadlock graph extended events now? The visual, when you get a deadlock, you have
It's in SSMS.
yeah, it's in SMS profile. Do you have that in extended?
Can you double click to open it that way?
No. So like in profile, you can add an event for deadlock graph. So if a deadlock happens.
Yeah, that event is in extended events. Yes. So the question is, do we have the deadlock event within extended events and does it display the deadlock graph? Yes, every event that exists within Profiler, which there's 180 of them, all of them exist in SQL Server as of 2012. And that's 2012, right, 10 years ago. So at this point, there's over 900 events and extended events, probably over 1,000 at this point. So if you're doing troubleshooting related to any feature that's been added since 2012, you really should be using extended events because none of those are coming back to Profiler, even though we're going to let you keep using it. Yeah?
So SSMS 20.
Yes?
Chance, are you going to finish the dark theme?
Ha! Where are my stickers? So the question was, for SSMS 20, are we going to finish dark theme? Tell me, did we start dark theme in SSMS 20?
No, there's a hack you can do to SSMS to turn on the original dark theme and it doesn't work for the menus.
Right. It doesn't work for the menus. So the reason why we haven't done dark mode is because there's been so much customization. Who else would like dark mode? Okay, take some, pass them around. Okay? I am not making any promises on anything. There's a lot, I'll get some more. Tell me if I need more. There are a lot of challenges related to making dark mode work within SSMS because of the customize. We can't just take the theme, the dark mode theme that exists in Visual Studio, and apply it in SSMS because there's all of these custom windows and dialogues and it looks horrible, right? So when we go to the new shell, is it going to be possible, that's not ladylike, for us to do that? I am not 100% certain, but I will tell you that I have already mentioned it to engineering as something I want us to investigate. So I'm not promising anything, but I also need you to know that I'm not ignoring it in any way. Are there still more folks that would like stickers? Okay, take them, pass them around. If there's extras, I'll come back. I feel like I'm at church. Right? Anyone else? Okay, other questions? I think we still have time.
You're giving them out instead of having a plate.
You have 5 minutes left. Think about how much better drinking will feel tonight after you've let us know how you really feel.
Right.
Go ahead.
It's like sticker.
I haven't done this in a while, but if I recall, it is difficult to Management Studio. Did you get one?
No.
That may be going to get easier in a
So the question is around using the DAC, the dedicated admin connection, in SSMS, and that potentially getting easier in a future release. And I'm repeating it extra slowly because I want to make sure that Erin hears it, because she would be the one to answer this question.
Sorry, go ahead. Anybody else? We need any more?
The DAC connection in SSMS. Any plans around that? Or
The dedicated admin connection?
Yeah.
Tell me how you'd like it to be easier. What problem are we trying to solve?
I haven't used it in a while, but if I recall, the Object Explorer tries to open multiple connections, which just kills.
Oh, okay.
I put a SQL command to do it because Management Studio has always seemed to have a problem with the DAC connection.
Well, I don't know that, it's tricky. It's a little bit tricky, right? Because dedicated admin connection, you get how many?
One.
You get one, right? And really, where do you want to do the dedicated admin connection from?
In a query window.
In a query window. So I think what you're telling me is that you do the dedicated admin connection within the query window, and then you try to connect to Object Explorer?
Well, I guess when I fire it up, connect to a server,
Yep.
Object Explorer is opening automatically.
Oh.
Or a query window can be opened.
Oh, but do you know you can? Yeah, that's a little bit tricky. I'm not sure how we could engineer around that. I understand the challenge that you're running into, but when you're opening SSMS, you wouldn't be, you could cancel.
That sounds dangerous.
Wait, no. I think,
You just do a new query, right?
Right.
Just a query.
right. Like, I think what I'm struggling is like where we're running into the problem exactly. So we can take it offline. We can take it offline.
Good question.
Other questions, comments, feedback, things you love, things you don't love. Bourbon. Oh, we got 3 more minutes.
Could you show the PowerShell thing one more time?
Which PowerShell thing?
In the Object Explorer?
Oh,
Just the navigation real quick. I know you flashed them. I didn't get a photo of
a
it.
screenshot you mean, that I showed in the deck?
Yeah.
The options?
Yeah.
This isn't cool, I know. This way? Hold on. Let me zoom in. And those are documented. You're welcome. I also added some documentation for like on the connection dialog. There were a couple things that we didn't have documented well over here. The always encrypted page and the additional connection parameters. We documented those as well. Okay, but if this is, we'll come back to it. Other questions? Okay, y'all almost made it to 6. Excellent job. If there's any follow-up questions, please come on up. Please make sure that you submit feedback. We always know, and not just feedback about the tools, but feedback about the session. And also, I'm gonna do one final plug, and I'm gonna go back the way that I totally should not go, and then I'm not because that's like painful, which is we'll go all the way back here, and let's not forget about the survey, please. Oh.
One comment on the survey, that's aka.ms/SQL survey. If you fill it out, you at the end or at the very beginning, you have the option to share your email address with us. If you want to have a mentoring session with Sanjay Mishra, who is our product leader for SQL Server and Azure SQL from a program management side, he's willing to do some of those with people who fill out the survey. So otherwise, you don't have to include your email address. But please fill out the survey. It'll really help us as we go to figure out what to do with all these tools.
And please fill out the survey related to this session specifically, right? What you loved, what you didn't love, so that maybe we can do it again, or maybe not. But thank you.
Thank you all so much.